You are listening to a Titan Talk with Charles and Jesse, your home for everything regarding DC's TV show Titans. Gentlemen, bring it on. Titans, go!
Hello again, Titans fans. Welcome back to TitanTalk, the Titans podcast. It's a big one this week as my fellow Titan Talker, Jesse Jackson, and I are joined by none other than the rather famous DJ Nik from Milan, Italy. Or should I go by your introduce your last name, Nick? Because... Should we go with that? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your last name. Is it
Well, thank you very much, Charles. Yeah, I think DJ Nik is fine. It would be pronounced Pizzigoni. And may I say...
Pizzigoni. All right.
Pizzigoni, that's right. And may I say it's a pleasure to be here with both of you today to discuss this great first season of Titans. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we definitely appreciate it. I know Jesse's been looking forward to it as well.
Yeah, we have. It is great to have you with us, Nick. I don't know if you were our first fan, but you certainly have been one of our most vocal fans, and that is very kind of you. You've been consistent feedback and really good insights, and we're just excited to have you join us. That's right, listeners. You thought just because Titan Season 1 was over, you're going to get at least one more episode from us.
Exactly, because we can't quit talking about this show, apparently.
Absolutely. And it's a very timey-wimey episode. Sorry as I spoke over you, Charles.
No problem.
Because Nick is in Italy, and so this is almost like a Set Listing Bruce episode where we were talking to someone from another country, which also gives us a special thrill.
Yeah, it does. And with Nick obviously being from Milan, it does give our show a little international flavor, which is always good. And I just want to thank Nick primarily first because of giving us that great intro that he did.
The pleasure was mine. It was great fun doing it.
It sounds great, and obviously with Nick's professional DJ voice, Jesse and I are just going to try to tread water as we try to, and just hope that we can kind of sort of approach that level. We're going to do our best, especially since, we're American, we have that disadvantage. So, you have to kind of forgive us for that. But
you guys do a great job. Trust me.
Well, thank you.
Well, we're going to do our best, and we definitely appreciate it. So here, episode 19, guys, as we move steadily along in our series. So, we're going to talk about Titan Season 1, as Jesse mentioned, where we're going to kind of recap a little bit of the 11 episodes of the first season of Titans, the DC Universe series. Obviously, we're not going to go into considerable depth because, hey, we already did that. But otherwise, we'd be here all day, right? So you've got things to do. We've got things to do. And I'm sure Nick has things to do. So why don't we just kind of break the season down into little tiny nuggets and give a kind of like our what we really enjoyed about the episode, what we maybe didn't enjoy about the episode so much. And obviously we want to get Nick's thoughts on this because, hey, he's new to the show and hasn't had a chance to express himself, but now he does.
So be prepared.
Exactly. So, we're kind of throwing you in the deep end and hoping you'll swim. But
I'll do my best.
I'm sure you'll be just fine. All right. So without any further ado or a don't, let's talk about the first Titans episode.
Oh, wait a minute. Did I fall asleep? Did we not give Nick a chance to tell a little bit about himself and to
thank you
share
so much for reminding me.
his
Yes.
Titan story. I was
Again,
like,
you can see how professional we are. 'Cause I'm constantly forgetting stuff. So before we do that, before we get into the episode breakdown, Nick, as Jesse's was kind enough to point out. So obviously you've got a comics background. We've talked about this on Facebook. And so I kind of want to get an idea of how you're approaching Titans. Have you been a longtime Titans comic fan, or is just this because you're a comics fan you thought, hey, I'll check out the series?
Well, here's the thing. I am a huge and avid comic book fan. I've been a huge fan since I was a kid, and I'm still reading comics today, both DC and Marvel. I would say mainly when it comes to DC Universe, I've been mainly more of a Batman, Superman, Flash, Justice League, should we say, group fan. I have enjoyed Titans, especially my all-time favorite story is The Judas Contract, which is a story that has remained ingrained in my mind ever since I've read it. I have enjoyed I haven't followed the Titans comics that much, but every now and then when, I hear there's a certain interesting story arc or something of that nature, I will read it. But to me, when it comes to comics, they've been more peripheral characters, at least for me, when it came to reading. I used to watch the animated show, the very first one. I thought that was good.
Right.
And also because loving Robin, obviously, because being a huge fan of Batman, I was always also a huge fan of Robin as well. So it was nice to see what kind of Robin we would get in this case, or Nightwing, obviously, later on. But and so that was my in to the Titans series. And plus, to actually be able to have a full-blown real actors doing a Titans TV show, that was something that was huge for me. Having watched the animated shows, having read the comics, I was super curious. That was what my into that.
So, I think you echo a lot of things all of us felt. You talk about, you're a big Superman, Batman fan. You also do some Marvel. Any favorite, Superman appearances or storylines on that?
When it comes to comics, well, Death of Superman is probably my all-time favorite, and everything that then follows that. When it comes to Batman, there's too many to choose, I think. But I think one that's very near and dear to my heart is Year One, because that was actually the very first story I read in full, and so that stuck with me. And so I basically went with that. And, oh, excuse me. Let me just get that.
They always call when you're recording a podcast.
Absolutely. Exactly. Sorry about that. Anyway, so as I was saying, so it's Year One, and also I think Nightfall were my two big favorite ones. Sure. I love what Tom King is doing now with Batman. But I think that those were mainly my all-time favorites. I'd have to say Year One, Nightfall are the ones that are nearest and dearest to my heart when it comes to
those Batman. Are great. Those are great storylines. Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. Year One is a classic.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's as far as I'm concerned, it's the definitive origin of Batman, and I think that a lot of people consider that, especially in Tom King's recent Batman run. Following, in the Rebirth era, there's a lot of echoes of that incorporated into his tone and his approach, and I totally agree. And Nightfall's a great storyline as well. That's just it's insane the amount of characters in that one, but introduced Bane, so I'm guessing you have to be a really big fan of Bane.
Well, to a certain extent, yes.
Because he was such a formidable villain in that storyline.
Oh yes, and also Azrael. I'm also a big fan of Azrael as well. That was also one of my draws to that story was Azrael, and just everything that goes around it. Because I suppose when it comes to DC, I always appreciate the rather gritty, morose, sometimes excessively dark stories with Batman. And that was, it's as dark as you can get, I think. Right. And I just really loved the entire thing. But like I said, I enjoyed also what Scott Snyder did as well before Tom King arrived. He did an awesome job. And I think Tom King is carrying the torch very well in that regard as well. Also.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and especially if anybody's read Tom King's Mr. Miracle. knows that he's a superb writer. All right. I'm guessing also, Nick, that because you're a Batman fan, that you've know quite a bit about Nightwing as a result.
Oh, yes.
And
Indeed.
so essentially, I'm guessing that Robin, Dick Grayson, was your kind of entry point character to the Titans. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're actually correct. My two entry points were Nightwing and Kid Flash, because also being a huge Flash fan as well, I would also follow, the escapades of Kid Flash. So obviously, I'm like, where did Kid Flash go? Oh, he's joined the Titans. So let's go see what him and Dick Grayson are up to, and what. So I would follow that part as well. So they kind of brought me into the Titans, as it were.
Now you are now talking Charles's language.
Exactly. So I'm a huge Flash fan and a huge Superman fan. So you're getting bonus points from me right there.
Awesome.
So, all right. So everybody ready to break down the episodes now?
Yes, we are. Perfect.
Now that Jesse is kind enough to get us back on track. I appreciate that, Jesse.
No problem.
All right. So let's break down the episodes now. Obviously we're going to talk about the pilot episode, Titans. This was, of course, the debut, the very first Titans episode, very first DC Universe episode, original episode, and introduced Robin, the first Robin, Raven and Starfire, and also gave us a little taste of Konstantin Kovar, the father of Titans, Russian superhero Red Star. So I'm going to get Nick. Let's start with you first, and get your thoughts on this first episode. So did you enjoy this first episode, or what did you find appealing about it?
Well, I absolutely loved it. It threw me for a loop at first, because this was not what I was expecting. Because obviously, having seen the Titans animated series and such, you'd think it would have been more of a light-hearted kind of series, and not as dark as it ended up being. But
a bit of a shock then. Yeah.
It was a shock, but in a good way. I was like, whoa, they decided to really spin this on its head and do something really different, and I really enjoyed it. I did find that at first the fact that the profanity might have been a little excessive, because as I know you and Jesse have discussed sometimes, it can work, because obviously they want to say we're doing maybe something a little bit more adult, but when it's taken to excess, it loses its power. Right. But however, I thought it was a great introduction to the series, and I think it was kind of also DC saying, if you guys liked what we did on the first kind of seasons of Arrow, for example, which were darker and more, this is kind of what we want to do compared to maybe what you might have been used to in the past. And I really enjoyed it. I thought the introduction to Dick Grayson was great. I really liked what Brandon Thwaites did on this very first episode, and just the atmosphere that was created. And all in all, it had me. I had me wanting more. The only part that I was a little bit unsure of was when we saw Beast Boy for the first time. That was a little bit. But other than that, it got better after that. But I think it was a strong start to the series.
Okay, so you thought it was a decent introduction.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. All right, Jesse, what about you? What did you think about this first episode?
When I think back about, you and I had done several episodes beforehand, anticipation. I will not repeat the story that we told about. This was coming home to you and I. Bringing our lives together, talking Titan on a podcast. I remember being very, very happy. I am not organized enough that I keep my episode ratings on a spreadsheet somewhere. I always think I should. When I used to do Castle, I did do that so that, when we did our end of season, I would know what ratings I gave. But if I remember correctly, I rated this one really highly because I think they did everything we wanted it to do. The casting seemed right on point. They introduced to the characters. We got a cameo from a Twin Peaks character. I just
Sherilyn Fenn.
Yeah, I just loved everything about it. Do agree with you, Nick. In fact, I remember we talked about the Gar Beast Boy was kind of a last-minute add-on. I don't think we really needed that. but everything else was perfect, and I think it set the season up perfectly. One other thing, and then we'll let you talk, Charles. I am binging with the lovely Linda the CBS show The Good Fight, which was a spinoff of The Good Wife. And because it's on CBS, they can cuss now. And they are more prone to dropping F-bombs. And because it used to be a network show, the first few times, like, I don't know that character would say that F word. But I've gotten used to it, and I kind of understand. So I don't know if they continued to overcuss or just use the right amount of cursing on the season. I kind of like, as we go through, both of you guys to kind of give your thoughts on that. But yeah, overall, really great start.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, the swearing, that it has greater effect when you don't use it as often. And as Nick mentioned, that I don't have a problem with it personally, but I think it has more impact when it's used sparingly. There are certain moments when it's absolutely fitting, I think, and it comes off more powerful that way. So just dropping it in just for the sake of dropping it in, I think it kind of loses its effect. And so if Titans decided to just tone it down just a notch, I think it would be more effective when they actually do swear. That's just my opinion.
And I also think that let's, for example, use a show like The Sopranos. The characters were built in with a lot of profanity in their personality and how they talked. So I think most of us do not. We only curse when we're really shocked or really angry, and so I think that's what I would go with too. And there have been some perfect times where Corey has said F because of what's going on, and it seems perfectly appropriate. While other times it does feel like, oh, well, let's just have Dick say a nasty word because we can.
Yeah, but all right. So as far as the introductions of the characters, I thought Dick Grayson, of course, is obviously probably the most shocking because of that alley fight scene that he has, and just his brutality, which we talked about that, hey, maybe they toned it down a little after seeing the reaction to the first trailer. And so I thought that was good, and that they toned it down a little. And then Corey's introduction, she's introduced as having no memory of who she is. So that kind of makes her more enigmatic. And I think that kind of set the tone for the rest of the series. All right. Let's move on. Episode 2, Hawk and Dove. And obviously this is notable because it was the introduction of, hey, Hawk and Dove. Hank Hall and Dawn Granger, the second Dove, as we get confirmation later on. And we also get the introduction of the nuclear family. So, Jesse, let's start with you first this time and get your quick thoughts on what you thought of the introduction of Hawk and Dove and the nuclear family.
This was a great second episode. We got a lot of interaction. We see Hank and Dawn together. We see them in their costumes. We see them, fighting bad guys, their relationship. We get a little bit of story that Dawn and Dick have a history. We get him helping Rachel and Rachel feeling betrayed because he was going to leave. We get the fights against the villains. At this point, I'm thinking, yeah, boy, we got a nice introduction, and now then it's put the pedal to the metal. This season is going to be just full of exciting storytelling. And wow, do we have a great season in front of us.
maybe not so much. So Nick, how about you? What did you think about this episode?
I absolutely love this one. I have to also admit that I do kind of have a crush on Minka Kelly as well, because I mean she's just an incredibly gorgeous woman. But
That's
aside
fair.
from that, I mean, I will throw that out there. That said,
No. Like, have to interrupt you. I think if you look to the right, there is a long line of us feeling that same way.
Like back of the line, buddy.
Yeah, ever since Friday Night Lights, I have just really liked her as an actress. She is just really smart and beautiful. She was the Almost Human, right?
Yeah, she was on Almost Human. Yeah, yes.
Really good in that.
That's where I first noticed her.
Yeah, absolutely great stuff. So continue, Nick, but I'm right there with you.
I had
to chime in on that one. Yes.
Yeah, I had to throw that one out first and foremost. Outside of that, I really enjoyed the nuclear family. I think they were menacing to the right point, and they were also kind of creepy as well, because they had that mixture of creepiness and also menace, which was right for the characters. And the actors who played them, I thought, did a spot-on job. And we didn't mention her earlier, but I also wanted to, of course, congratulate also Tegan Croft on her portrayal of Rachel thus far, because she has done a stellar job. And yeah, I also love the relationship between Hawk and Dove in this sense. I think the two actors really played off well. You could feel that relationship was real, and sometimes you don't get that, because you do get these relationships where they don't sell the love or the attraction or whatever, or the feelings they have for each other. And I think they did an incredible job of that. And all in all, it was an incredible episode. And as soon as I saw the nuclear family, I was like, wow, yeah. As to echo Jesse's comment, we're in for a treat.
Yes, I think so. And I, as an Outsiders fan from back in the 80s, I was pretty geeked about this, because the nuclear family is pretty obscure supervillains. And the fact that the Titans decided to incorporate them and gave them a more modern feel, but yet they also felt somewhat retro because of their kind of Leave It to Beaver 1950s television style attitude.
Yeah.
About everything.
Yeah.
But with like dark overtones. So it kind of like was as played up as wholesome, but had kind of almost like a David Lynch sinister undertone underneath, which I really liked.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect description, Charles. I also love the fact that I think in a lot of ways that's where TV can do their best, is finding, like, yeah, everyone says, oh, I want to see the Joker, or oh, I want to see, Mr. Freeze, or Brainiac,
right,
whatever. But to find a smaller,
the big guys,
known,
yeah,
and add that where you can make them their own is a really smart creative decision.
Yeah, because and as a writer, I find that you get these little known villains that we don't either get to see very often or we don't know that much about, and they're ripe for potential to develop that way.
Yes, well said.
Because you don't have so much continuity and canon that weigh down as baggage. You have the freedom to kind of develop them your way and maybe put that kind of unexpected spin on the characters, which I think is great. One other person I want to give an acknowledgement to in this episode, Alan Ritchson as Hawk.
Yes.
I thought did a great job. And after seeing him in Smallville as Aquaman, if you remember that little bit of trivia, I didn't expect much once I first, knew that he was cast, because he didn't come off as especially memorable in his Aquaman performance. But here, as Hawk, I think he's completely dead on. He's note perfect. He has that kind of cockiness, but also the underlying anger. And as we found out later in the season, there's justification for that anger. And he really gave that character a lot of depth, I think.
Oh, yes, definitely. I will also add the Hunger Games served him well.
Yes, he was in the Hunger Games.
Yeah, it was. He was really good in that. And I do think that it would have been a really easy role to play kind of shallow, a one note, I'm the angry, conservative, or, but he had some depth to it that really, really works. And as we talked about in last episode, where you talked about, I would have not saw a true Dawn love triangle because I really liked Hank and Dawn together. But in this alternate dream reality, seeing Dawn and Dick together, I really like that as well. So I think he's definitely, by far, this show cast really well and doing a great job of the character part of the storytelling.
Agreed.
Yep, definitely agreed. And obviously, Alan Ritchson and Minka Kelly have great chemistry together, which I think obviously helped to sell their characters.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to episode 3, Origins, which finally gave us a decent introduction to Beast Boy for a little while, after teasing him for a bit. And we get the introduction of the Messenger, a.k.a. Dr. Adamson, who is a bit of a little creepy player behind the scenes. And as we find out, he's tied in with this whole group that is wanting to help bring back Trigon into this dimension. So
Charles, we're gonna have you go first this time.
You're gonna flip it on
See,
me.
there we
Whoa,
go.
okay. All right. I see how it is. All right. So we get the kind of a following up with the nuclear family, and we have we kind of get this episode kind of gives us a more of a flashback with Dick Grayson, and then essentially doesn't so much focus on how he became Robin. It focuses more on how he became Bruce Wayne's ward or foster parent. And I found that kind of intriguing, and the fact that they had young Dick Grayson, who's played by Tommaso Cinelli, who's really good in that role.
Really good.
Does a great job, especially for a child actor. And because we know that sometimes child actors don't quite have what it takes. But here, I think Tommaso Cinelli does a really good job, and he, is actually doesn't want to stay with Bruce at first. He has to kind of be persuaded to stay. And, he's initially wanting to find out who killed his parents. And that kind of obviously is something that drives him, especially after he becomes Robin. And I thought that was really fascinating. So Nick, what did you think about that?
Okay, I think this was another great episode, and I think in this one particularly, Anna Diop really shined in this one. I mean, I gave her that kind of, she won't take any lip from anybody, and is kind of can stand on her own 2 feet and stuff, and that I really appreciated. And I also kind of same time feel bad for the backlash that she has received of late, to where she's had to apparently even get off her Twitter account and all this kind of thing because of the fact of the backlash, and that was something that I just could not tolerate. I was very sorry, but she did an awesome job, and she showed that she was right for the part. What I felt about this episode, and I don't know about you guys, but the fact of never getting to see Bruce Wayne, only seeing the shadow and this silhouette. I don't know about you. I was almost like yelling at the TV screen saying, show us the guy already. You kept teasing him and teasing him and teasing him, but you never got.
We'd see a silhouette in a doorway, whatever. But yeah, we never quite got to see him, did we?
Exactly, and I think it was an opportunity to possibly show the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, and the fact that he wasn't just such an aloof father figure, that the man actually cared for him, where they maybe portrayed the fact of him being an almost absentee father and kind of being very sort of removed, as it were, which was a shame. I think it could have been a good opportunity for the writers to do something with that, but I guess that's the direction they wanted to take. Outside of that, once again, Tegan did an incredible job on this episode as well. She's just been going from strength to strength, and I love the way that she juggles the dark side of herself and, shall we say, the frightened, young child or young adult. And I think that really, really showed in this particular episode.
Jesse, what about you?
Yeah, first off, I echo the Bruce comment. I understand they don't want to cast. Let's say there aren't any legal issues or problems that they're doing. You don't want to cast Bruce Wayne because then later, if you get someone good enough, they aren't getting that much screen time. I mean, there's a lot of logistic things with it, but it does bother me that we don't see him or Alfred. You would think you would at least have seen Alfred doing this. I think they did a good job of working around it, but it felt a little obvious to me that they were having to work around it. Everything about this young Dick Grayson is great. His attitude, his idea, him wanting to, find the killer and kill him himself, revenge, his idea he keeps escaping and, going wild, the interactions with the social worker. The only thing, we get another side of that later in the season where we meet the guy from the circus, the strong man.
Yes.
That you can tell he would have been going there too. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of good stuff in this season. At this point, I was like, well, okay, this is a nice little stop at the, rest stop. We're going to get some pretzels and a Diet Coke, maybe some beef jerky, and then we'll get back on the road right away.
Well, I thought it gave us some nice backstory a little bit to kind of flesh out our characters a little bit, especially for maybe viewers that weren't as familiar with them.
Right.
But we get the introduction of this kind of where we have the nuns that Rachel goes to, and it's St. Paul's, and adds to that whole mystery of like, well, what happened to her after she was born, how she was raised, and the woman who we thought was her mother is not her mother. And I thought that was interesting. And then we also get more of Corey's mystery, where we go to that skating rink palace, and she has that locker, which takes her to a storage locker, and adds to her mystery as well. So I thought that was really good. And you're absolutely right, Nick. Tegan Croft does a superb job as Rachel. Definitely one of the highlights of this series, because she's asked to do so much in this show, and she comes through. And it's definitely a credit to her. And Anna Diop is tremendous as well. We've talked about how frustrating it is that she gets all this hate on the internet for absolutely no deserved reason whatsoever. And it's a shame that happens, but hopefully people will back off and just enjoy what she does. So
now I have no problem with a little, not hate, but a little bit of unhappiness with the wardrobe people. Yes, for those of you who are playing the TitanTalk drinking game, take a drink. Jesse complained about the wardrobe. Yeah. Now, what I find interesting, Charles, is when I think of this episode, I don't think of the nunnery. I don't think of any of this other things. Everything is just the young Dick Grayson. So I'm glad you brought the other stuff up. It certainly helps to build the mystery of Rachel.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to our fourth episode. And this is one of my favorite episodes of this season, Doom Patrol, the fourth episode. So, Nick, obviously this is the introduction of the Doom Patrol and kind of teasing these characters for their own spinoff series, which debuts just in February. So it's coming up really soon, some with different actors. But what did you think about the introduction of the Chief, Robot Man, Elasti-Woman, and Negative Man?
It was incredible. One word, incredible, and it really makes you want that show. I think it was an excellent sales pitch for the TV show that's going to be coming up. Once again, a great job by all concerned. Though I will say I'm very curious if they do cast Timothy Dalton. I believe he has been cast.
He is. Yeah, he is. He's the new chief. Yes.
Which is going to be. I mean, I think. He
looks amazing in the photos. There's actually a photo of him as the chief out there, and he looks perfect.
Exactly, because seeing what he did with in previous roles that he has done, I think it just suits him to a T, and he's going to do a great job. But when it comes to what we saw in this particular episode, first off, Jeff Johns did an incredible job writing this episode. I have to say, he really, I think it was one of his strongest episodes to date.
Right.
And I loved the kind of kookiness, but at the same time. Do we, because maybe people who don't know the Doom Patrol at first will be like, do we trust these people, or are they just kooky for kooky's sake?
Right.
So they just got a little bit odd, but they're good people at heart. And I thought that was brilliant. I love the vibe they had going on. It kind of almost reminded me a little bit of the X-Men to a certain degree. But outside of that, and loving the X-Men like I do, obviously I couldn't but fall in love with this episode. But yeah, I thought it was great. I love the interactions between all the characters. And in this case, Beast Boy really shone. I think in this particular one, you started to see a hint of the bond between him and Rachel, which I thought was great. And once again, you have to hand it to the casting director for choosing these actors, because there was not one role out of place. It was just a brilliant episode from start to finish.
Fantastic. How about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I like the episode a lot. I am not a Doom Patrol fan. I know, Charles, you are, especially the Grant Morrison, right, Rowan?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Just
That's
not
the definitive Doom Patrol, in my opinion.
Yeah, just once again, there's too much to read and watch that you can't see it all. So I did not have the excitement that you did, but I really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were interesting and a lot of fun. I did not like the chief, but as you shared with me, that's kind of his shtick.
Right.
So I'm okay with it.
He's a bastard. Let's just put it out there. He's a bastard.
But at this point, we kind of had 2 episodes in a row where we didn't kind of move forward very much. Now I can't remember how I felt at the time, but from a retro, looking backwards, you kind of go, we're kind of losing traction on our storytelling here. So, but yeah, overall, I agree. I'm looking forward to the series. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I pointed out when we talked about this episode before was that as a non-Doom Patrol fan, this kind of helped develop your interest in the spin-off series. Am I right?
Yes,
Jesse?
absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. It's almost like a pilot within a brand new show for a new show. So yeah, it's this kind of recursive loop almost. And the Doom Patrol, I love this. As a huge Doom Patrol fan, I was thrilled. I saw elements of Grant Morrison in this, but also Jeff Johns' approach to the Doom Patrol, especially Elasti-Woman, where Johns introduced that concept in the comics of that the fact that she's just kind of this almost gelatinous blob that has to concentrate to hold her form together. And so that kind of makes her more freakish than kind of like the others having. It's almost like when the Doom Patrol was created in the 60s, Elastigirl, as she was known then, essentially was this beautiful actress who had these powers where she could grow really big or really small. And apart from that, she wasn't really much of a freak per se. And here, John's kind of introduced that element, and it kind of makes her a little bit more tragic as a character. You feel sorry for her. a little bit. And it does make more sense that she would feel like she has to kind of isolate herself away with these other misfit DC characters. And obviously the big thrust of this episode is we finally get a good, healthy dose of seeing Ryan Potter as Beast Boy in this episode, and his relationship with Robot Man, Cliff Steele, is note perfect. I really enjoyed that, and they almost had this kind of, we talked about this kind of Human Torch and the Thing kind of brotherly antagonistic relationship, which I thought was very, very great to see on screen.
Yeah, kind of, and I think we talked about the time that, the Torch and the Thing, Ben and Johnny, that kind of feeling, just really good. And finally getting a chance to shine, because he doesn't have a lot to do in the skating rink, but in this episode, you really get to see him and how likable he is. So that was, great stuff.
Yep, totally agree. All right, let's move on to our 5th episode, which is Together. So finally we get the Titans together for the first time. After the events of the previous episode, Beast Boy is essentially given permission to kind of join the other group, join the Titans. And so he goes off with them. And we also get the return of the Nuclear Family and the Messenger in this episode. And we get the first tease of the second Robin, Jason Todd, at the very end of this episode. So kind of a big one. And let's start with you, Jesse. What did you think about this one?
I was happy that we were it seemed like we were back on track. I like the they end up being together. We get the kind of core group starting to interact together. I did like the training sequences. It was just another good episode, and it did feel like, we're starting to move forward a little bit. We did get the surprise appearance of Jason Todd at the end, which was very cool. We get a little bit of the Nuclear Family being afraid as they're making, as the messenger, Dr. Adamson, is making breakfast. But it was good stuff.
All right. How about you, Nick? What did you think about this one?
Well, first off, speaking of Dr. Adamson, Reed Birney is an incredible actor and a perfect villain. Because you have to love, I think, his machinations, his deviousness, he's a clever villain. That's what I like. He's not kind of your mustache twiddling kind of character that you'd get, and I really love that. And of course, the training session was great. It reminded me once again of X-Men First Class, the movie X-Men First Class, where you had the mutants coming together for the first time and showing off what they could do, and I love the vibe that there was between everybody. And it was the Nuclear Family once again was really well done. And of course, as soon as Jason Todd came on the scene, I was like, oh wow, this is really getting good now. So all in all, another incredible episode. Very well written by Brian Edward Hill and Gabrielle Stanton. And so I think it at least it moved the story forward. I think it was what people were waiting for. Once again, it was kind of like when are they getting to the fireworks factory? And they finally got to the fireworks factory. And to see them all together at last, I think it was what people were waiting for. And luckily, we got it after 5 episodes.
Yeah, it was. I think at this point, because it was the 5th episode, we're like, okay, finally, we actually get to see these characters interact and doing something proactive a little bit, as opposed to just kind of fumbling around and not quite connecting. And in addition, we also got the very first together moment of Dick and Corey, who, taking a page from the Wolfman and Perez era, kind get to have hot sex. So if you're a fan of that, if you're a fan of the Dickory shipping, you had to be pretty happy about this episode because we got that.
No pun intended.
Well, that's the ship name, Dickory. I can't really. I didn't come up with it,
but
pun
intended. Yes.
No pun intended. But it was pretty hot. It was a pretty hot sequence between Brenton Thwaites and Anna Diop. Obviously, the teaser at the end with Jason Todd, Curran Walters, just comes out of nowhere and just really just amps up the excitement level. So I think after what Jesse was talking about, that after a couple of episodes where we kind of had to kind of more setting things up, this kind of again moved the momentum forward and built it up. And the cliffhanger at the end was great. It made you like, I've got to see this next episode. So I thought this was definitely a step forward.
Indeed.
All right. Let's move on to episode 6, Jason Todd, and the latest in our non-impressive episode titles, as we've talked about. So, Jason Todd, this is obviously the big spotlight as we get the two Robins, Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, interacting with one another for the first time, and Dick kind of gaining some insights as he tries to figure out Jason and quickly accepts him. And then we also get some flashbacks where we finally kind of get the reason of why Dick is so angry, I think, because of his guilt over killing Tony Zuko. And we get a little bit more with the messenger, of course. So I thought this was really good. And, I just love Brenton Thwaites and Curran Walters bantering back and forth, where Jason is this kind of hot-headed, cocky, just throwing himself into the fray without really thinking. And Dick, as the older Robin, kind of sees some of himself in Jason, but also kind of is concerned for Jason because he doesn't want Jason going down the same path that he did. So I thought that was really interesting. And as a Batman fan, even though we didn't get, because of the whole Warner Brothers protectiveness over rights, we didn't get that with Dick and Bruce Wayne as Batman or Alfred. We kind of get a good taste of that here with Jason Todd. So Nick, what did you think about this?
Well, the first thing I felt, and I don't know about the two of you, but initially when Jason Todd and Dick meet in this episode, I kind of got a Dick Grayson, Tim Drake vibe, as in Tim being very excitable, being so sort of almost fanboyish when it comes to meeting Dick. And I think that might have been a nod to the relationship that Tim Drake and Dick Grayson have, and I really appreciated that, and I liked it. Once again, I think they played off each other very well, and I also like the fact that we got to see a little bit of the detective side of Dick Grayson.
Yes. To
see what has Batman taught you aside from fighting. If we're talking about the world's greatest detective, he must have taught you also how to be a good detective as well. So I'm glad we got to see some of that too. I think also the Nick Zuko was an interesting character too in this particular episode. I felt in parts it might have been a little bit rushed in certain aspects. I mean, granted, we have to deal with like 40 minutes, so there's only so much you can do in 40 minutes. But all in all, it was a good episode, and once again we had Dr. Adamson, who I absolutely adore, and I was so sad to see him go when he did, because I would have kept him a little bit longer. But all in all, it was great. It was another good one.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked this episode a lot. As I said last time I talked about this, Jason Todd, you just loved him till you didn't. From my perspective, he was great. You're like this respect he has for Dick and I think you're very right, the Tim Drake excitement and, kind of, oh, golly gee whiz. But then at the end where you see how dangerous he is and how out of control. Great flashbacks, wonderful interaction. I think it was an important story to show why Robin is on the journey that he's on, Dick specifically. So yeah, I just think this was great.
Yeah, I do too. And I thought this was, I just loved seeing Dick and Jason interacting. And I agree that there were definitely elements of Tim Drake. It's almost like they kind of incorporated those elements, but also made Jason consistent with his character.
Yeah.
Because he was that kind of just that a little, like ahead of himself, more impulsive, more reckless. And so they were kind of faithful to both characters, I think, in this depiction of Jason Todd. And I want to see more of these two characters interacting down the road. All right, so let's move on to episode 7, Asylum, which we kind of got a tease of in episode 6 with Reed Birney, who again is fantastic as Dr. Adamson. But here, this is where things kind of take a dark turn, but also kind of pause in the momentum a little bit, where we get the various Titans being tortured in the asylum, but also we get introduced to Angela Azarath, Rachel Nichols' character, as Rachel's actual mother. So I want to get everybody's thoughts on that. So Jesse, let's start with you first on that one.
If I remember correctly, I didn't care for this episode very much. I did not think it gave us any new ground. The whole in Dick's mind. I guess the big excitement is that Gar turns into a tiger and kills someone. I did like the Corey, you can't start a fire without a spark things.
Had to work in the Springsteen reference.
Yes, indeed. And,
take a drink, everybody.
Dick destroying his Robin costume after he, goes all crazy at the end. So I just don't know if we needed this episode. So I don't know if this is if I had to pick a least favorite episode, but this would be close to one of those.
And Nick, how about you?
Well, I probably will have to agree with Jesse. This was probably the weak link in the chain. Granted, you have to feel, well, we didn't know this at first, but you have to feel bad for Brandon Thwaites, who has to go on 2 mind trips throughout this season, first here and at the end. So you have to feel really bad for him. So that I guess it may have been a foreboding of things to come. And also, obviously, the scene where Beast Boy does tear the guard's throat out. It obviously then plays into what we see at the end in the season finale, and I believe episode 10 and then 11. Outside of that, I'm a big fan of psycho movies, so the whole mind trip thing is a big thing for me. So I enjoyed that part. And I thought it was well explored and well done. But at the same time, as Jesse said, we might not have needed this episode, or they could have trimmed the fat a little bit in certain places to where you can have those moments like, for example, Dick going on the mind trip and Beast Boy's first kill. Outside of that, Angela Azarath, we got that, which was obviously very important. I just felt once again, yes, this was the weaker one. I did enjoy it, but at the same time, it could have been done better.
And by the way, Nick, your theory on Rachel's mom, has the house corrupted her, or has she had devious plans all along?
I think I'll have to be diplomatic in this case and say
no. You can take either one. We're no worries.
We won't judge you.
Yeah. I think it's a bit of both in the sense that maybe she is weaker-minded, as it were, so maybe easy to manipulate.
Right.
And so she just needs a tiny little push to throw her over the edge. So she maybe is straddling the line of, what do I do? Do I love this man? Don't I love this man? What do I do? And I think Trigon, in that sense, just gave her that extra push and threw her over the edge. I think in that case, it's a bit of both. She might not have wanted to initially, I think, but maybe in the back of her mind, she thought to herself, I maybe do love this man, even though he treats me terribly. So I think it's a bit of both. I think it's the house, but also at the same time, I think it's subconscious thoughts of hers too.
Yeah, I think that's a great theory, and actually, it works because you could kind of see that maybe she was, because of being trapped in that asylum, that she was kind of teetering on the edge already, and then, like you said, Nick, that. Trigon, all he had to do was just kind of give her a slight nudge over that cliff into darkness. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. But obviously, the big moment is where Dick decides to flambe his Robin costume at the end of the episode and says goodbye to being Robin. Although we do kind of see him as Robin later, but it's more of a flashback type thing, or a hallucination type thing too. But that was a big moment. So let's move on to episode 8, probably my favorite episode of the first season, Donna Troy. And this was obviously huge. I talked about this, that my wife, Lori, has Donna Troy is her character, her favorite DC character. So this was kind of a big deal to her. And consequently, it's also a big deal to me because I like Donna Troy a lot. And I thought that Connor Leslie, who plays Donna in this episode, does a superb job. And I want to get your thoughts on this first, Nick. What did you think about the introduction of Donna Troy?
It was absolutely excellent, and from the get-go, you immediately had that brother-sister relationship between Dick and Donna, and I thought that was so well played and so well done. And of course, you had to love the little boy wonder phrase that was thrown out. Not to mention the fact that it was once again a very strong character, and I definitely hope we get to see more of her as things progress, because she really does an incredible job. And yet another very strong episode for Raven as well, I think. And you know, the climax at the end, I mean, it was just, whoa, you know, what's happening here? You know, Corey's like grabbing Rachel by the throat, and you say to yourself, where's it going to go? Where do we go from here? So I think it served as, one, an excellent introduction to a new character, and it was eased in very well. And secondly, you got this incredible cliffhanger that made you where you were counting the days for the next episode.
And Jesse?
Excuse me. Loved it. Loved everything about it. I want a flashback movie with both these young characters playing. Let's see if we can find a young kid playing Wally West and someone playing Aqualad.
Roy Harper. Yeah.
I mean, just it just was absolutely wonderful.
Andy Hubick, who plays young Donna Troy in this, does a really good job. And again, Tommaso Sinelli does great as young Dick Grayson.
Yeah, they're amazing. I love that we find out in real life that Leslie Connor is a photographer.
That was brilliant.
Yeah. Because she has I went to her website. She has some great photos, just period. But then some she did on set. And she seems to embrace the idea. She loves being Donna Troy, which is just wonderful. If this is not the best episode of the season, it's certainly in the discussion. And if you want to do standalone episodes, these are the ones you need. You need this kind of character. You need this kind of storyline. I love this episode. I love the introduction. And I agree with you, Nick. The brother-sister relationship, there's not a hint of romance. This just truly is, they are to quote from Doctor Who, they're mates, right? Yeah. So
Yeah, I think so, and it was that bond that they have is just it's so good, and Brenton Thwaites and Connor Leslie, they have this great chemistry, but not in a kind of sexual will they or won't they way. It's obviously the younger brother, older sister kind of relationship where Dick can go to Donna, feels comfortable going to Donna about what he's going through, and tells her about that. Well, hey, I've left Robin behind, but what do I do now? And Donna trying to advise him, going, you'll figure it out, but also realizing that there's more going on with him over the course. And there's that great scene at the end where they're just sitting around having a couple of beers, working out what's going on with Dick. And I thought that was just really great stuff. And then, of course, we have that great cliffhanger at the end where you talked about where Anna Diop grabs Tegan Croft by the throat, and you just can't wait to find out what happens in next week's episode. And you probably know where I'm going with this.
Well, hang on. One other thing I wanted to talk before we go to the next one, Charles, is your point of the relationship between Donna and Dick. He seems happier next to her. He seems
he's comfortable
stressed.
with her.
I mean, it's almost like it's
his safe space almost.
Yes, that's exactly well said. I mean, he's sitting there going, he can relax and be himself, and he isn't playing a role in front of her, and he knows that it is a safe set, and she will.
He can let his guard down and not put on this facade that he does with the Titans.
Yeah, so I love that about them.
Yep. So we'll see if the Titans, if Dick can finally get to that point with the Titans where he can actually relax and loosen up and take the stick out. So we'll see.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to episode 9, where we slam the brakes on the momentum that we just built up with Hank and Dawn, which is actually a good episode, I thought. But so this is where we have the kind of origin of Hawk and Dove, the original Hawk and Dove. We get the introduction of the first Dove, who is played by, if I'm trying to get my copious notes here, Elliot Knight, I think. And so we get the introduction of that character. We get more of Hank Hall's backstory and the tragic events that bring Hank and Dawn Granger together. So let's go with Jesse first on this one.
Deep sigh.
or do you just want to kind of close your eyes and think about Minka Kelly?
Yes, exactly. After the fact, as we look at this, you're right. Our momentum totally stops. What saved it at the time is I said, well, they stuck the landing. They said, we've got to find Jason Todd. So therefore, it was important for us to make this pit stop to pick up, to get gas, so we won't run out of gas at the end of the season, because we're about to have this long stretch where there is no gas station. Got to tell the story. As I stretch the travel metaphor probably too far, and
I believe I voiced my concern though about this.
Yeah.
That well, what if they don't?
Yeah, and they didn't. I mean, you're right. If this was a short story, and they took away the kind of at the end, and this was, if they had seen, like if this had been the second episode, and you go, oh, that's kind of interesting that they totally changed, but that would have made an understanding of, you could have had the first episode setting up, second episode these guys, then you could have ended with Dick knocking on her door, and that would be the cliffhanger. Then the 3, you go to what episode 2 was. That could have been interesting. But this is just great story. I love the backstory. I love watching them interact together, them becoming friends, and then more. But yeah, just this is where our GPS quit working, and we are now lost.
That's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, Nick, how about you on this one? What did you think?
Well, first off, I want to start on a bit more of a somber tone in this case because this episode deals with one of the plagues, I think, of society, which is child abuse, and I think which is obviously one of the worst crimes I think anybody can commit. And I have to say, and it's very hard. I'm thinking to portray something like that without it being too extreme or being something that people might want to shut their eyes or not see. And I think Jeff Johns really handled it well. He handled it with class, and he handled it in a very good way to where you realized what was going on, but they didn't show too much, which can sometimes be more impactful because of the fact that you don't see and you imagine it in your mind and you create your own movie, which can be even more potent, I feel. And I think he did a great job with that, and the way that issue was handled. Outside of that, it was great to see the first incarnation of Hawk and Dove, and the brotherly relationship there, and not to mention, of course, Dawn's mum. I think that was
Marina
really well
Sirtis. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
She did a great job, and the whole the ritual of taking tea and everything. I thought that was really, really sweet and really nice, and of course, the build up to the relationship then between Hank and Dawn, because you sometimes see in TV series and in movies and such, people fall in love after 5 minutes, and you're like, how can you buy into that? It just doesn't work. It just is not real enough. And here it felt real, that they were building towards the attraction and the love that they felt for one another, and that was handled also very well. At the same time, though, slamming the brakes like that, it was a little bit of a downer. They could have maybe placed this episode earlier in the season. It might have worked better had it been placed earlier. But outside of that, it gave us a great insight into the origins of Hawk and Dove, and that was done well. So I will save it for that particular sense.
Yeah, it almost feels like after the Hawk and Dove episode and then the Hank and Dawn episode that we could very easily get a Hawk and Dove spinoff series. I think these two characters could definitely carry it, and they obviously have great chemistry together, Alan Ritchson and Minka Kelly. But here, the pacing by Jeff Johns in this episode. You brought up Jeff Johns, who wrote this episode, to get for just a 40-minute episode to get us from, okay, we have to introduce Hank's brother, Don. We have to explain how Hank and Don became Hawk and Dove. We also throw in the little tidbit about Hank being abused as a child to protect his brother, Don, from being abused as a child. We have to then introduce Dawn Granger and her mother Marie, and talk about her mother Marie's abuse at the hands of her husband or Dawn's stepfather or what have you. It's not quite clear, but we have that, and then kill off Dawn Hall and Marie, and then bring Hank and Dawn together and make it believable. And just have it flow so well, and
not feel rushed.
No, it didn't.
Right.
You telling it, I'm like, wow, it must have been a 2-hour movie.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
I know. It's just the way, just me running down this series of events. Yeah, it sounds like, this should have been like a 2-hour. I agree, like a 2-hour movie. But Johns paced this so well, he got all that to flow naturally in 40 minutes. So I think that's credit to his skill as a writer. I think
Absolutely.
And credit to, like Nick pointed out, credit to Jeff Johns for tackling a very uncomfortable subject, the idea of child abuse, and the way it was depicted here. I agree, it wasn't exploitive at all. It just it addressed the subject and gave us a better understanding of Hank Hall as a character what motivates him, why he's so angry, and why he feels this desire to take it out on criminals, and how he comes to share that with Dawn, with this very disturbing ending, right before, that closing of the door at the very end, and not being, Dawn agreeing to stay there as Hank pummels the coach who abused him, and Dawn kind of going along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And just it made you think about this a little bit, and I really liked this episode for that reason. It's definitely, as this is about as far from the Teen Titans animated series as you could get, I think.
Oh, and then some. Yeah.
And then some,
absolutely.
yes. But in a good way.
Yeah.
And it was very gripping television, I thought. All right. Episode 10, our penultimate episode, Coriander, where we get not only the introduction of Trigon, we get Starfire finally getting her memory back, Angela doing a big heel turn, to use a wrestling phrase, where she flips from good, or so we thought, to evil, and we get the return of Donna Troy, and finally get the resolution of that cliffhanger back from episode 8. So there's a lot to unpack in this one. So Nick, why don't we start with you first? What did you think about Coriander?
Okay, well, as you said, there was a lot on our plate in this particular one, and we finally got back to where we left off in Donna Troy, and we got to see the resolution of what happened after Corey grabbed Rachel's throat, which was what we were waiting for, to see what would happen after that, and it was handled very well. We got to see a spaceship, and everybody's happy when they see a spaceship, and it was done, and that was very well designed and very well done. And at last we got to see the backstory, or so the origins of Corey, the planet Tamaran and everything that goes with that, which was great. And Trigon, they fully addressed Trigon in this particular episode, which was good. And I thought the Gar going on the mind trip of seeing the apparitions in the house and all this, that was creepy to the right level, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of certain horror movies that I have seen, but it's done so well. To a certain point, you were like looking behind you, seeing, is there somebody watching me or anything in that, because you're kind of getting creeped out by it.
Yeah, it's very psychological horror. Yes,
exactly, which I thought was done really well. And then, as you said, Angela Azarath showing her true colors, or is it the fact that she is also in the sway of Trigon, and she's just under his control and under his thumb? But that was really well shown, and once again, a great job done by the actress too. And other than that, the fact of the mystical the barrier, when you see Dick go through the barrier and the others staying behind, that was good. But at the same time, you kind of would have hoped that they could have gone in together, because you wanted to see the team tackle the big bad of the season. But I guess they wanted to do more of an, intimate encounter. Dick having, established this relationship with Rachel throughout the season up until this point, they maybe wanted to be a little bit more intimate, as it were, and the person that she was closest to, I guess. But all in all, it was a good episode once again, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, no complaints on this one.
All right, Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good in this episode. I liked Corey's, reveal. Not shocking to us comic fans, but
sure,
it still was good to see. I was happy in a sad way that Angela was evil, because I had said that. I don't trust her. This seems a little too, hey guys, I have a house that just standing there unused. Everyone can join me. But this is good. I Dick and Donna working together is always fun. So yeah, this was a we were setting up the end of the season, and, this is great. We've got our villain coming. We are ready for, oh boy, and I know we're not going to wrap up every storyline, but we're fixing to have a kick-butt end of the season, all our Titans together, adventure next week. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm traveling for Christmas. I'm going to have to wait extra time to talk to Charles. And then.
And we'll leave it there. So, yeah. This, we get the introduction of Seamus Dever as Trigon, who obviously probably threw a lot of fans off because, hey, he doesn't look at an all demonic here. He's not red. He doesn't have things growing out of his forehead, and doesn't look nearly as demonic as he should.
And if you're a Castle fan, I'm sorry to interrupt. We talked about it. He was absolutely charming and lovable in Castle. So you're like, oh wow, this is a great guy, and
right.
So great casting to kind of show things a different way.
Yeah, but as I pointed out when we reviewed this the first time, is that, well, this is just maybe Trigon taking on human form to kind of help seduce Rachel Nichols, I should say, Angela, and other characters to kind of put them off guard, put them more at ease so that he can corrupt them. And his true demonic form, which we kind of get a glimpse of inside Corey's spaceship, is that, that's his true form. And hopefully we'll see that at some point. Fingers crossed. Who knows? We'll see what the budget has for season 2. But so we'll see where that goes. But finally we get they stop dancing around the name of Rachel's father. They call him Trigon, and we finally lay it out for everybody, even though anybody who's a Titans fan at all would know, hey, it's Trigon. It was great to see Donna Troy back. We got to see her using her lasso, so I thought that was a big thrill if you're a fan of seeing her as Wonder Girl.
Absolutely.
And Corey finally getting her memory back so that, hey, we can stop dancing around this amnesia storyline and finally getting to figure out who the real Corey is. And
we also, we also got
okay.
Gar being a fanboy the same way he
right.
was with Robin. Now he was with, with Donna. Like, it's the lasso, and just he's just so really fun.
Yeah, it's a credit to Ryan Potter because he does bring that kind of enthusiasm, that geeky enthusiasm.
Yes.
Which brings a lot of humor to the show, which
Absolutely.
I think is great. But Angela doing her big heel turn, was she always evil? I'm not so sure still, because as Nick pointed out, well, maybe she's just corrupted by Trigon, just like Dick Grayson ends up being, or that maybe it looks like Beast Boy is becoming because of seeing his evil self and in that reflection. And so the question is she just another pawn of Trigon, or is she completely evil? Now, right now it appears, well, hey, she's in a relationship, as she points out, and just before killing the local sheriff, and it looks that way, but I think the jury's still out about whether she's truly evil, but so hopefully we'll get to find that out.
Okay.
So, but it does build to this, what everybody would think would be this really big, exciting season finale, and it doesn't. So that sets up episode 11 at last. Dick Grayson, which we just talked about here a few days ago. So I'm not sure what kind of fresh take Jesse and I will have about it, but this obviously is the big Trigon corrupts Dick Grayson episode, which we get the cliffhanger at the end where Dick has his black contacts in and the very heavily smoky eye going. And after killing Batman, although we know, hey, it's not really Batman because this is all Trigon's manipulation, right? And
Yes.
Batman never really killed all of his bad guys, like the Joker and the Ventriloquist and Two-Face and the Riddler. And Jason Todd's not really paralyzed. And obviously Dick Grayson's not married to Dawn Granger and doesn't have a kid named Johnny. So with all that in mind, Jesse, what did you think about this finale?
So we've been a little bit of distance, not too much, Charles. It hadn't even been a week since we discussed this.
Right.
I'm still disappointed. I really, I wanted more, and I wanted a good ending to the season. Interesting story. This alternate, dream world certainly has something to think about it, but I was just a little disappointed, and I'm curious to hear Nick's take on it.
Yeah, well, let's find out from Nick.
Well, first off, it was interesting that Glenn Winter was brought on to direct this episode. One of my all-time favorite Canadian directors. I was a huge fan of Smallville way back when, and he was, of course, one of the main people behind that series. And I thought it was interesting that we kind of got that Smallville vibe at the beginning of the episode.
Right.
The very sort of light-hearted situation, and that was very much
the
Glenn
domestic
Winter.
bliss, and yeah,
the Beach Boys, the sun, him in the pool, absolutely.
And it had that CW vibe to it. I mean, I don't know if you guys felt that.
Yeah, I think that's well done. Yes.
Yeah, it was just because it was so brightly lit compared to the rest of the series, which is shot so dark, and with heavy filters, and yeah, I love that. So what else did you think about this, Nick?
Well, I guess it gave people the impression of what if Batman was the Punisher. I think at first is like, and he went off the deep end and started killing his foes like Frank Castle would do. Granted, we probably knew from the get-go it was all a fantasy and it was all in Dick's mind. But I think it gave us an interesting insight into that. It was a bit of a letdown because of we were building to this climax, building, and it was thinking it was going to be an incredible finale, an explosive finale, and it was a little bit of a whisper compared to a shout. So,
right.
Which was a bit of a shame, but all in all, and we're missing an episode, as you guys mentioned on your podcast last week.
Right.
The fact that we're missing an episode, and I was hoping it would be a double feature, and they maybe would have made it at least an hour long or something of this nature, but we didn't get that. All in all, it was a good episode. Once again, we were teased Batman. We never got to see him fully in the face or him express any kind of words to Dick in any sort of form or shape, but a good episode all around. And I have to say also the post-credits teaser was interesting. I have to hand it to Jesse about using the example of the shiny toy in front of the child, teasing Superboy. I thought that was actually a very spot-on analysis. And, I guess we just have to see where we go from here. I think it was a good way to end the season, but at the same time, it was a letdown at the same time. It was a half and half episode in this particular case.
Yeah, it just comes off this episode as so strange to when you're trying to build up this momentum with Trigon to kind of just stop everything to use a Marvel phrase, what if Batman went off the deep end and killed all of his rogues gallery? And what would happen then? And then with Dick Grayson being called in to confront him and take him down, and just this, it would have been a perfectly decent episode in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
To have it be the season finale, and as you pointed out, Nick, is that the running time to have this just be another normal 40-minute episode when we don't have an episode 12. I think a lot of us would have been like, okay, well, we only have 11 episodes, but hey, if the 11th episode is double length, I understand. But we didn't get that, and it just seems so odd of a creative decision to me to have this depicted the way it is. Now I get that, okay, they wanted to have the cliffhanger be well, we're going to end the season with Dick Grayson being corrupted by Trigon. Oh, noes. And what happens, what's going to happen then? But is that strong enough of a cliffhanger? And I don't think it is, really.
No. But I also wanted to add one other thing, Charles. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're
there.
fine. You're fine.
Maybe it was also because a second season had already been confirmed, and so they thought to themselves, we can get away with this because the second season has been confirmed, and so we don't have to tell too much at the end of the season. So it might have been in that security of having a second season, the writers thought to themselves, we can just put this out and people will run with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this season would have been. I think it was structured for a 2-season story arc, as opposed to just a single season. And I think it probably would have been more effective had they thought, well, we don't know if we're going to get a second season, because then they could have built up for like a finale, and then do something else for the second season, as opposed to just kind of hoping people would keep watching.
Yeah, I just truly wanted. I wanted and I will talk about this already, but I wanted a true ending. I wanted a kind of the way the story did, that we could have this a nice kind of we've finished this chapter and we're ready to start another one. It just seemed a little bit too, well, we're just going to have this staying on and we don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, and I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to homage the Terror of Trigon, this 1984 storyline that launched the second New Teen Titans series by Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
Yes.
Which featured Trigon one by one corrupting the various Titans and putting them under his control, and making things look even more bleak and hopeless. I get what they were doing, but it just, from a story standpoint and a momentum standpoint, this episode just frustrates me, and I think it frustrated a lot of people. I don't think I'm alone in that, obviously, because of the three of us really feeling this way. All right. Anything else about the season before we talk about hopefully what we'll see in season 2?
I just want to say that I say this with love. It was a good season. I don't think it was a great season. If I look at it just as the idea that we are getting a live Titans season, then it was great. I think they've got some work to do, and that is true often with new series, new seasons. They have to kind of figure out what the story they're wanting to tell. So it's off to a great start. I'm looking forward to it, and I've really enjoyed watching it and talking with it to you, Charles, and it's been a special treat having Nick with us today, kind of a third voice, hearing the thoughts on the series.
Yep. And how about you, Nick? Anything else about this first season you want to address?
Well, I will probably echo Jesse's thoughts. I mean, I'm looking forward to season 2. I think they've laid the foundation for something interesting and something entertaining. Granted, there will always be that bittersweet moment of the end of the season. But at the same time, I think they're on the right path. But at the same time, as Jesse said, they definitely have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, it does feel like there were a lot of things that worked, obviously, in this first season, but some things that didn't work. And hopefully they can learn from that and make a better second season. So fingers crossed. And hopefully we'll come out of the gate strong in the second season. So with that in mind, anybody got any thoughts about, like, we know that we're going to obviously pick up more with Trigon and have to resolve this whole cliffhanger with Dick being corrupted and whatnot. We're not quite sure yet what form it's going to take, the way this is going to be resolved. We do have this foreshadowing of that, well, hey, Hawk and Dove have to go meet Jason Todd at some point, and presumably the three of them will kind of join, come into the main storyline and help take down Trigon. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. Any guesses on what we might see in season 2?
Well, I'm hoping, I mean, it's a pipe dream that we might eventually get the Judas contract storyline. I'm really hoping we will. Granted, there's so many threads to pick up and tie up before we even get that kind of thing, or if they even introduce Slade Wilson at any point.
Right. They were talking, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they were talking that, yeah, Deathstroke and Jericho at least are confirmed for the Judas contract storyline. But they're going to have to wrap up the Trigon storyline first, presumably.
That's pretty much, I think, it. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how many episodes it will take to resolve the current story arc. And I guess from there, we'll see what happens. And, as Jesse said at the time, we'll have to see where Superboy fits in and if they can put him in the right way rather than shoehorn another character in.
Yeah, that is something to consider, that teaser at the end with Superboy and Crypto.
Yeah, I am curious how they're going to. They haven't finished this story, and it's a major story, and then we're going to try to do another major storyline. It almost feels like they are now, as I stretch the metaphors again, they're the all-you-can-eat buffet.
Right.
And they're loading their plate up, without even thinking about, okay, let's, pace ourselves. And so before I would try to take on, Jericho and everything, the Joshua, just this whole storyline, Judas contract.
Right. Yeah.
I would want, okay, let's tell this story first. Let's kind of make things going. And then you either should have finished this storyline or, finish it up next season and the third season do this. But, they're not asking us for our opinions.
Well, they should be. Gosh darn it.
Yes, they should.
Amen.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Now, obviously, if they're going to do the Judas contract, and I'm pretty sure both of you are going to agree with me on this one, they need to introduce Tara. They need to introduce Tara Markov, and because it doesn't really work without her. She's so integral to the storyline, and they obviously haven't even teased her yet. And they've got so much to sort out. So I'm thinking if they are going to start trying to adapt the Judas contract, they'd almost would have to do a split season. Where you take the first half, you wrap up the Trigon storyline properly, and then start telling the Judas contract storyline that maybe would carry over to a Titan season 3. But
yeah, exactly.
That's the way I would do it. Now, what they're going to do, I have no idea, but that's the way I would approach it, given what we've seen so far, because obviously it's going to take more than just one episode to wrap this up. Unless they do like a big double-length episode right off the bat to wrap everything up and then start fresh with the Judas contract. So we'll see what happens.
So, couple of questions.
Yes.
Will we see Dick in a Nightwing costume in season 2?
Ooh.
We damn well better, as far as I'm concerned. We were supposed to get that for episode 12, but we didn't have an episode 12, so that needs to happen. That's a must as well.
Okay, so you say Charles says yes. Nick?
Oh, I definitely. That's a big yes, but and hopefully it will happen sooner than later.
Yeah, I'm thinking it probably would. It's not going to happen until the resolution of the Trigon storyline.
Okay.
I think Dick will come out of that storyline somehow and realize, well, hey, I need a new identity, and go from there. Maybe it'll have something to do with Superboy, as well because of the from the comics, Nightwing, when Wolfman and Perez first created Nightwing, they gave him that Superman connection because of the Superman characters, classic Superman characters, Nightwing and Flamebird from the Bottle City of Kandor. And that Nightwing was influenced by that and as kind of a tribute to Superman. And whether they maybe incorporate that somehow, that could happen, but we'll see.
That could be a clever take, for sure. Yes. I think if they throw in some Kryptonian lore for good measure, we always love Kryptonian lore. So,
yeah. and Superboy might be a way to kind of explore that kind of Kryptonian metropolis background, and then maybe from there that maybe this would kind of give Dick inspiration. Maybe somehow Superboy knows the story of Nightwing and Flamebird and tells it to Dick Grayson, and maybe that inspires him. Who knows? We'll see. All right.
All right, Donna Troy in costume.
I think we definitely need to see that. From what I understand, there is a costume.
Okay.
Even though we didn't get to see it, so we'll see.
Okay, and finally, do you think we will see Aqualad?
I don't think so.
I don't either. He
might be off limits right now because of the Aquaman movies.
Okay.
So we'll see, but
okay.
I think that would. I mean, there's so many other characters that they need to. If they're going, especially if they're going to do the Judas contract.
Okay.
I would think that would be way down the road.
Okay. Very nice.
I would have to add that if they do bring Aqualad, that comes with a caveat. They have to give us Kid Flash as well.
Yes. Yeah, I would love to see Wally West. I think they could easily do Arsenal, Roy Harper, but I know that currently he's appearing on the CW's Arrow series, so maybe he's off limits as well.
All right, very good. That's all I had.
These stupid rights issues, it's limiting our show, and we should have a better show because of it. But we'll see. All right, Nick, anything else before we kind of move along? And
I think that's pretty much it. All I will say is I missed your incredible singing on this episode, Charles.
my horrible, incredibly horrible singing. Yes.
Other than that, I'm good.
I never claimed to be a singer. I do it to annoy people. But thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. All right, so. Everybody, obviously we don't have any Tell It to Titan talk from DJ Nik because DJ Nik is right here. You've already heard him tell it to us. So we don't have any other feedback, I don't believe, from Facebook or Twitter.
We do not.
So why don't we just go right into our shameless plugs? And now, obviously, if you want to be like DJ Nik, who normally would write in, you can reach us here at Titan Talk at titantalkcast@gmail.com. That's titantalkcast@gmail.com. Or you can reach us on the Twitter machine at TitanTalkcast. We'd love to hear from you there. Love to have you follow us there. Or Facebook at Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast. That would be great. We'd love to have you like us there. We know a lot of you have. I think we've got 200? Somewhere up there. We're definitely getting up there.
Yes.
We definitely appreciate everybody who's liked us there. And please tell your friends about us if you're so inclined. We definitely appreciate that. And also, if you're on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, please rate and review Titan Talk. Let us know what you think of our little podcast of Titan's goodness. And anything that if you want to be honest and let us know good or bad how we're doing, but hopefully you're enjoying us, and that helps people find us when searching for Titans Podcast. So I'm sure Jesse would also appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Now, why don't we just let Nick, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Well, when it comes to me, if you're a fan of country music, you can find me on my website. That's whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. And that's basically your one-stop shop to everything that I have going on. There's a link to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And yeah, so you're welcome to come and join us every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the very best of country music. And that's what I'm all about.
Fantastic. A 4-hour program. That's
Yes, so 4 hours of country.
So this is proof, Jesse, that we don't run long on this show. We're only at an hour and a half, so we're doing okay.
We're a podcast, not a radio show.
I tried.
Yes.
Jesse, how about you? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
Well, I am on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast with Charles.
Which I hear is a great podcast.
It is an award-winning podcast.
Award-winning
where we talk about Doctor Who. Charles and Karen are going to be taking lead on that probably for the next couple of months as I kind of refresh and revamp. But I will be on there at times. I also will be on Set Leslie Bruce, my music podcast, which I am hoping to figure a way to get Nick on so we can talk about music. And that's about it. Charles, how about you?
Of course, at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine or at Charles Skaggs on Instagram. Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio. And my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on TitanTalk, including Titans news about Doom Patrol or Young Justice or the other upcoming DC Universe shows like Stargirl and Swamp Thing, Harley Quinn, animated series. Also kinds of comic book sci-fi news. Just posted recently my review of the Aquaman movie, if you want to check that out. Spoilers, I enjoyed it. And anything else? News of my other podcasts I do for Southgate Media, including the aforementioned Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Also the Phantom Zone podcast that I do with Karen Lindsay, friend of the show, where we talk about comic book shows on television, like all the CW shows and other stuff. And also Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we talk about all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, etc., etc. So everybody, thank you so much for this great first year of Titan Talk. It's been a big one. And thank you to Nick for joining us on this wrap-up show, this season 1 review. We definitely appreciate you, Nick.
Oh, thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this.
You did a smashing job. You did perfect. You were perfection. Again, making Jesse and I look horrible by comparison.
Oh, well, whatever.
You doubt me, sir? But yeah, no, seriously. And we always appreciate you writing in, Nick. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. You've really become a part of this, and now obviously appearing here, I think I'm sure people enjoyed hearing you as well, and I think that's fabulous. Obviously, yep. Now, next time on Titan Talk, it may be a few weeks before we record an episode because I think Jesse wants to take a little break because he's probably tired of talking Titans and whatnot. He's probably tired of talking to me.
Not tired of you, just tired of podcasts.
Yeah. So and. Obviously has some more, responsibilities at home that he needs to address. So we'll kind of let that slide a little bit, and
yes.
We'll pick up here in a few weeks, probably to talk some Young Justice Outsiders, as we probably will go through the first 2 or 3 episodes and kind of just recap everything and get a little feel to something that kind of tide us over until Doom Patrol starts in February. So that's kind of the plan right now, and hopefully all of you will keep listening because we definitely appreciate that, and hopefully got some Young Justice fans out there as we talk about this. So lots of some Titans characters going to be appearing on that show, including Nightwing and Beast Boy, I believe, and others. So please check that out. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
Indeed.
All right. So everybody, thanks again for listening to us here at Titan Talk. And we see you next time right here. Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Titans together, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.